the descent into night. We are embarking on this journey because King Asvapati has embarked on this journey. We are following him in his exploration of all the planes of existence. We've been reading about the realms of life, the different realms of life, and what King Asvapati has come to the conclusion that there's some kind of basic defect at the very roots of life, which is spoiling things. And he wants to change that. He wants to find that defect and set it right. So we'll see how far he can succeed and how far we are able to understand what he's doing. Out of the chill steppes of a bleak, unseen, invisible, wearing the night's grey mask, arrived the shadowy, dreadful messengers, invaders from a dangerous world of power, ambassadors of evil's absolute. In silence, the inaudible voices spoke. Hands that none saw planted the fatal grain. No form was seen, yet a dire work was done. An iron decree in crooked uncials written imposed a law of sin and adverse fate. Life looked at him with changed and somber eyes. Her beauty he saw, and the yearning heart in things that with a little happiness is content, answering to a small ray of truth or love. He saw her gold sunlight and her far blue sky, her green of leaves, and hue and scent of flowers, and the charm of children, and the love of friends, and the beauty of women, and kindly hearts of men. But saw too the dreadful powers that drive her moods, and the anguish she has strewn upon her ways. Fate waiting on the unseen steps of men, and her evil and sorrow, and last gift of death. A breath of disillusion and decadence, corrupting, watched for life's maturity and made to rot the full grain of the soul. Progress became a purveyor of death. A world that clung to the law of a slain light, cherished the putrid corpses of dead truths, hailed twisted forms as things free, new and true. Beauty from ugliness and evil drank, feeling themselves guests at a banquet of the gods, and tasted corruption like a high-spiced food. A darkness settled on the heavy air. It hunted the bright smile from nature's lips and slew the native confidence in her heart and put fear's crooked look into her eyes. The lust that warps the spirit's natural good, replaced by a manufactured virtue and vice, the frank, spontaneous impulse of the soul. Afflicting nature with the dual's lie, their twin values whetted a forbidden zest, made evil a relief from spurious good. The ego battened on righteousness and sin, and each became an instrument of hell. In rejected heaps by a monotonous road, the old simple delights were left to lie on the wasteland of life's descent to night. All glory of life was dimmed, tarnished with doubt. All beauty ended in an aging face. All power was dubbed a tyranny cursed by God, and truth a fiction needed by the mind. The chase of joy was now a tired hunt. All knowledge was left a questioning ignorance. So this is a continuation of the beginning of the descent into night that we looked at last week. We can go back to the bottom of page 203 and start at line 66. Dana, would you begin?
Out of the chill steps of a bleak unseen, invisible, wearing the night's braveness, arrived the shadowy, dreadful messengers, invaders from a dangerous world of horror, ambassadors of evils absolute. In silence, the inaudible voices spoke. Hands that none saw planted the fated land. No form was seen, yet a dire work was done. An iron decree in crooked, unsealed return imposed a law of sin and adverse fate.
Yes, thank you. So what is invisible? If you look at the whole sentence, out of the chill steps of a bleak unseen, invisible, wearing the night's grey mask, arrived the shadowy, dreadful messengers, invaders from a dangerous world of power, ambassadors of evil's absolute. So this word invisible applies to who? To the messengers, exactly, yes. So these messengers are coming in disguise. A kind of disguise that makes them invisible, a kind of camouflage. And that disguise consists of a mask, a grey mask of night, of darkness. And these messengers arrive into his awareness or consciousness, I think. These shadowy, dreadful messengers. They are coming as invaders into this world of life. Invaders from a more dangerous world, a world of power. And they are coming as ambassadors. They're bringing a message with them. They are ambassadors of evil's absolute, the extreme of evil, of all that is false and wrong and twisted and perverted. Prema, would you read?
I have one question. Invisible wearing the night grey mask. This animal is invisible, but is conscious or not? He collaborates with the evil consciously.
These beings are disguised. They are hiding themselves. They don't want us to be aware of them. They want to do their work in secret. We read about it now. They're doing the work, they're planting these seeds of evil, but they don't want to be seen doing it. So they are disguised.
Life looked at him. No, I read the next sentence also. You didn't explain. In silence, they know.
Yes, so not only they are invisible, they're also inaudible. They can't be heard. In silence, these inaudible voices spoke. They can't be heard, but still they are speaking, and their words are having an effect. Okay. Sorry? Have you absorbed it? You've understood this first sentence? Yes?
I would share something, if possible.
Share it loudly so everybody can hear.
Yeah. Reading this with a certain emotion, and what I felt is that every people, individual, makes the same travel in himself. For example, the voice, inaudible voice, or the unseen, push the individual.
Well, we are all facing the challenge of the influence of these beings. That influence is pervading life and spoiling life. The fact that they have that influence is the reason why many people who turn to spirituality feel that it's essential for them to reject everything that has to do with life, because life is like this, perverted somehow. But I think that Mother's view is that King Asvapati is seeing these things precisely because he sees that something needs to change. And in order for it to change, he has to see it clearly. And that is why Sri Aurobindo's sharing it with us. There are wonderful, beautiful, uplifting passages in Savitri, but there are also several places where he shows us in detail, very powerful and, as you say, moving detail, the darker side of life. And why does he do that? He wants us to be aware that things are not as bright and shiny and delightful as they may seem on the surface. And if we want to change them, it's no use just saying they shouldn't happen. It's no use preaching about them. In order to bring about this change, King Asvapati has to go right to the very bottom of this problem. And that's what has happened, what happens in the next two cantos. And it's really not a pleasant journey at all. So we have to, if we're going to follow this journey, I don't know, perhaps in the past we might have omitted or shortened this, but anyway, now we're going to do it. So we have to do it as King Asvapati does it, with some courage, some endurance, and with some determination to understand what is being shown and said, in order that we might have some possibility of contributing to changing it. The recipe for the change is given in the course of the cantos. But it's really very terrifying if we look at this. It's like a nightmare, no? What he's experiencing. So, in silence, the inaudible voices spoke. Hands that nobody sees are planting the fatal grain, the seeds that will spoil everything, destroy everything. Nobody sees any form, and yet that dreadful work is done. That influence does its work. And what is the effect of that influence? There's an iron decree. It's like some powerful dictator who is changing all the laws so that they have their opposite effect. A decree, and it's given with a lot of power. We can think of all the terrible dictatorships that there have been in the world in human history. And that decree, that command, is actually written down. It's written, but it's written in crooked uncials. Uncials are small black letters. In the past, the writing materials that people had were very costly and precious. And so the people who had to write, they tried to write as much as possible on one piece of papyrus or parchment or whatever it was. And there's a type of writing called uncials It means literally that they're just an inch high, but an inch is quite big. Actually, most uncials are smaller written. And the form is crooked, and it is written in black ink. I don't know whether Sri Aurobindo is making an allusion here. There are such beautiful old manuscripts from the past, from different countries. Some are illumined. But he says that this power of evil is writing in these crooked uncials. And these are the kind of what we call Gothic letters that became compulsory in Nazi Germany. After the war, they stopped using them and they started using these kind of letters. But that's what they seem to represent, an iron decree of cruelty and imposition on people's freedom. So this iron decree imposes a law on life, a law of sin, of wrongdoing, and adverse fate, misfortune, things that shouldn't happen. Tara, would you read? Oh, all right, Prema, please. Life.
Life looked at him with changed and somber eyes. Her beauty he saw, and the yawning heart in his, that with a little happiness is content, answering to a small ray of truth or love. He saw her bold sunlight and her far blue sky, her green of leaves and the hue and lesson of flowers, and the charm of children and the love of friends, and the beauty of woman and kindly hearts of men. But saw too the dreadful powers that drive her moves, and the ambush she has driven upon her ways, fate waiting on the unseen steps of men, and her evil and sorrow and last gift of death.
So he's seeing both sides. Life. He sees this great goddess of life, and he sees that she's looking at him with changed and somber eyes, not the beautiful eyes he had been seeing before, the eyes that are darkened by sorrow or falsehood. At the same time, he's seeing all the beauty of life that gracious, great winged angel has brought into the world. And it's beautifully described. The beauty of life he saw. And he sees the way that everything in this world is yearning for bliss. The yearning heart in things that is content with even a little happiness, enjoys small happinesses. That yearning heart in things answers, responds to even a small ray of truth or love. He sees her physical appearances in our world of nature. Life's gold sunlight and her far blue sky, her green of leaves, and all the colors and the scents of her beautiful flowers, and all the other beautiful sides of life, the charm of children, and the love of friends, and the beauty of women, and the kindly hearts of men. We see instances where complete strangers sometimes step aside to help or support or encourage others. No? That's from this yearning heart of things which has that kindly side of the wish to support and help. So he sees all those more positive things, but he is enabled now to see the dreadful powers that drive the moods of life, and the anguish, all the terrible pain and suffering that she has strewn, that she has scattered on her path. On her ways, her paths. For example, the way that fate seems to wait on the unseen steps of men. People do things, and without realizing what awful consequences they may have. The evil and sorrow that happens in life. And her last gift, which is death, dissolution. Not only perhaps the dissolution, the physical dissolution, but even the death of the soul can happen. Would you read, dear?
Yes. The weight of religion and difference. For think what our lives meditate and meant to work the full brain of the soul. Progress
Purveyor.
Now would the turn to the law of this like light.
Cherished.
The
Putrid.
words of their jewels.
Twisted.
Twisted forms as things free, new and true. Beauty from ugliness and even trouble. Feeling themselves gets a pancake of the gods and destroy
Corruption.
like the high-speed
High-spiced food. Look, that's enough. Thank you. Progress. Where did we start? Sorry. A breath, yes. This breath of disillusion. Disillusion comes when you think something is very fine and beautiful, and then you find out that you were mistaken. Then you feel disillusioned. Oh, all that admiration or that attraction that I felt, it was just an illusion. Disillusion, when you realize your mistake. And decadence. Decadence literally means falling apart. We use it particularly in terms of societies. So in history we have seen societies that made very great achievements. We look back with admiration at the high level of civilization that they had. But then we also noticed that those things became spoiled and rotten. Decadence.
From decay?
From decay. Actually, it means falling away. Cadence is a falling. Decadence. falling away from the heights into ruin. There's this breath, this corrupting breath, as if it's spreading disease. But there's a consciousness there which is even waiting, is waiting for life to reach its fullness, its maturity. And then, instead of allowing it to flourish and spread its seeds, it makes to rot. You know, if you harvest the grain, the rice or the corn, and then it rains too much, then that grain will all just turn to compost and be useless. So in that way, even progress, the progress of the individual, the progress of certain societies, becomes a purveyor, a supplier of death. It brings about death and destruction. And Asvapati becomes aware that this world which he's seeing sometimes clings, holds on tight to the law of a slain light, a light that has been illuminating and uplifting and helping, but then it has been killed. But although it is dead, people still cling to it. That law of slain light. And they're cherishing and honoring the putrid corpses of dead truths. Putrid, stinking. All this decay of dead truths. They have been truths. There has been a light, but it has become rotten. That world hailed twisted forms. To hail means to appreciate and acknowledge. Look, how wonderful. Hailed twisted forms as things free, new and true. This is what happens in decadent societies. So that world drinks from ugliness and evil as if they're feeding on beauty. They feel that they're guests at a wonderful banquet, a great feast of the gods, and they taste all that rotten food as if it is just wonderfully tasty and highly spiced. No? Something has gone dreadfully wrong with the life of that world. Ganga Lakshmi.
The darkness settled on the heavy air. Desert the bright smile from nature's lips, and slow the native confidence in your heart, and put fierce, crooked look into her eyes. The lust that walks the spirit's natural good, replaced by a manufactured virtue and
Vice.
The frank, spontaneous impulse of the soul, afflicting nature with a dual
Lie.
Their twins' values wake up a forbidden zest. Devi, relief on
Spurious.
the ego battled on rightness and sin, and each became an instrument of healing.
So on the atmosphere of that world, there's a darkness, as if a dark shadow is coming down. And that darkness is quite active. It hunts the bright smile from nature's lips. Normally, we like the sun to shine, and it's as if all nature is smiling. And if a big black cloud comes down, then the smile is gone. And even it destroys the native confidence in her heart, as if nature as it is natural for it to have trust and be sure of herself. But instead of that, this dark cloud that comes brings with it fear. And when somebody is fearful, they can't look you straight in the eye. They have a crooked look. So even in nature's eyes, that crooked look, which is coming from fear, appears. There's a kind of lust, this greed and desire that warps, that twists and spoils the natural good of the spirit. So that attitude, that greed, does something to the values of the beings in that world. There's the natural values of the frank, spontaneous impulse of the soul, which just feels what is the right thing for it to do. But this darkness replaces that frank, spontaneous impulse of the soul by a set of manufactured values, virtue and vice, being good and being bad. In that way, it afflicts what is natural with the lie of duality, of opposition, of contradiction. So these twin values of virtue, of feeling that you're very good and superior to everybody else, and of vice, where you indulge in all kinds of wickedness and corruption. These twin values whetted a forbidden zest. To whet, with this spelling with an H, it means to sharpen. You whet a knife, the blade of a knife, to sharpen it. So what it is, these twin values, the kind of thrill of this opposition between virtue and vice, it sharpens a zest, a certain kind of enjoyment, a forbidden zest. That taste for things, for the contrasts, makes evil seem like a kind of relief from good, because that good is not a real good. It's a spurious good. It's something that pretends or looks like good. In that situation, the individual ego battened on these opposing values, on righteousness and sin. To batten, it means to feed greedily, usually on something that's already decaying and corrupted. So then each, whether it's righteousness or whether it's sin, each of them becomes an instrument of hell, of that terrible world of falsehood which seems to be separated from all that is pure and good and true. Will you read it?
Rejected head by a monotonous goal. The whole simple life that led to life. In the wasteland of life, descent to night. All glory of life was given, vanished with doubt. All beauty ended in an alien space. All power was doubt, a
Tyranny.
finally crushed by God. And truth of affection needed by the world. The chase of joy was now a dry hunt. Our knowledge was left our questioning ignorance.
Thank you. So in a situation like that, the old simple delights of nature, of life, are just left to lie like heaps of rubbish on the side of a monotonous road, a boring, ugly, grey road. All those things that people used to enjoy and appreciate, the old simple delights, they're just rejected, left to lie like piles of dirty plastic by the side of the road, on the wasteland of life's descent to night. We're on a road which is going downwards. In that state, all glory of life, all the beautiful, powerful, high, noble things of life become dimmed. All the light goes out of them. They become tarnished with doubt. If you have metal things, if you have silver, for instance, if you don't keep it cleaned, it gets tarnished. The surface gets darkened and dirty, and you have to use something special to make it clean again. Tarnished. We value gold because it doesn't tarnish. But these, the glory of life was dimmed. It becomes tarnished because doubt has entered in. That natural confidence is being destroyed. And it looks as if all beauty ends in an aging face. It's unfortunately a kind of truth here in our world, no? All power is not a dreadful thing. Power can be a very great quality, no? But in a world like this, people think that all power is tyranny, is overrule and misrule, that is cursed by God, that is not accepted by the divine. All power was dubbed, was named, labeled a tyranny. A tyrant is somebody who misrules his country or his people. Truth is seen as something unreal, a fiction. Okay, the mind needs to rely on certain things, but they're only fictions. It was typical of life to chase, to hunt for joy, for bliss. But now, in this atmosphere, people are even tired of chasing after joy, and they think it's something not worth having. And knowledge. Knowledge used to be such a saving light, such a high value. But now, no, it's just a questioning ignorance. And because there's only ignorance, there can be no real, reliable answers. So how has all this come about? How has the glory of life got corrupted like this? That's what will be explored next.
What is a bleak?
Sorry?
What is a bleak? Line 66. Bleak and sweet.
Bleak. There's no beauty there. It's ugly or just plain. The time of the Industrial Revolution in Europe, the industrialists, they built whole towns for their workers. But there was no beauty in that. There were just rows and rows of ugly little houses and no room for gardens. And it was all grey and smoky, bleak. If the prospect is bleak, it means there's no room for hope or faith.
Chill steps is not what is that steps? The spelling is different in the same line. Chill steps. 66, line number 66. Chill steps. The spelling is different.
Chill steppes, S-T-E-P-P-E-S. We have steppes in Central Asia. They are vast expanses of rolling countryside, very often without a single tree. So these are bleak steppes. The sky is dark, the countryside is dark, there's no relief. Steppes, it means those vast spaces in Central Asia. They're not always bleak, but these ones are chill, they're cold. I suppose in the winter in Siberia it's very bleak. Yeah? Out of the chill steppes of a bleak unseen, invisible, wearing the night's grey mask, arrived the shadowy, dreadful messengers, invaders from a dangerous world of power, ambassadors of evil's absolute. In silence the inaudible voices spoke. Hands that none saw planted the fatal grain. No form was seen, yet a dire work was done. An iron decree in crooked uncials written imposed a law of sin and adverse fate. Life looked at him with changed and sombre eyes. Her beauty he saw, and the yearning heart in things that with a little happiness is content, answering to a small ray of truth. or love. He saw her gold sunlight and her far blue sky, her green of leaves and hue and scent of flowers, and the charm of children, and the love of friends, and the beauty of women, and kindly hearts of men. But saw too the dreadful powers that drive her moods, and the anguish she has strewn upon her ways. Fate waiting on the unseen steps of men, and her evil and sorrow, and last gift of death. A breath of disillusion and decadence, corrupting, watched for life's maturity, and made to rot the full grain of the soul. Progress became a purveyor of death, a world that clung to the law of a slain light, cherished the putrid corpses of dead truths, hailed twisted forms as things free, new and true. Beauty from ugliness and evil drank, feeling themselves guests at a banquet of the gods, and tasted corruption like a high-spiced food. A darkness settled on the heavy air. It hunted the bright smile from nature's lips, and slew the native confidence in her heart, and put fear's crooked look into her eyes. The lust that warps the spirit's natural good, replaced by a manufactured virtue and vice, the frank, spontaneous impulse of the soul, afflicting nature with the duals lie, their twin values whetted a forbidden zest, made evil a relief from spurious good. The ego battened on righteousness and sin, and each became an instrument of hell. In rejected heaps by a monotonous road, the old simple delights were left to lie on the wasteland of life's descent to night. All glory of life was dimmed, tarnished with doubt. All beauty ended in an aging face. All power was dubbed a tyranny cursed by God, and truth a fiction needed by the mind. The chase of joy was now a tired hunt. All knowledge was left a questioning ignorance.